Hi guys, welcome back, or welcome if this is your first episode tuning in with me. My name is Melissa and I'm here to help guide you through the world of wine. So if you're someone who is new to the wine world, who wants to learn a little bit more about wine, you are in the right spot, my friend. I am gonna hook it up for you. So this is my third episode so far. And in case you haven't watched them yet, I've done episodes talking about champagne as well as Cabernet Sauvignon. I'll put the links below, or you can go ahead and check them out on my actual channel. I don't really know why I'm explaining how YouTube works to you. I'm sure you've probably seen YouTube channels before and know exactly what to do. I am just gonna be impressed if anybody other than my mom is watching this. Shout out to all of you, and shout out to you, Mom. All right, anyway, back to why I'm here. To talk to you, of course, about Riesling. So sit back, relax, grab a glass of your favorite wine, and join me on this journey. So Riesling is an actual grape varietal, and for most people, Riesling gets a really bad rap. I will tell you, when I first started, to drink wine, just like many of you, I started with the sweet stuff like Moscato, and then moved to off-dry Riesling, of course, and then moved on to the drier, bolder wines after that. A lot of people I know went through this natural progression as well. I think it's probably because the older you get and the more you taste, the more your palate becomes adaptable and your tongue can take those bolder, drier flavors, so you learn to appreciate those a little bit more. But after I began drinking bolder, drier wines, like most people, I couldn't go back or appreciate the sweeter wines like Riesling as much. This is because most Rieslings that young people are exposed to who don't know wine that well think that the only Rieslings that exist are the sweet ones. But the truth is, and one of my absolute favorite things about Riesling is that it is such a spectrum. So yes, of course, there are sweet Rieslings, but there's also off-dry, dry, and then everything in between. So I really try to encourage people not to turn their nose up at Riesling. I appreciate it a lot in the world of wine, and I'm hoping that through this episode that I will encourage you to appreciate them and bring more Riesling into your life as well. I'm rooting for you, Riesling. So we're gonna talk a little bit about the history. The history of Riesling is actually an interesting story. So it appears that not a lot of people know the true origin, which I kind of love, because who doesn't appreciate a good mystery, am I right? Oh God, okay, I'm resorting to winking. So from what we do know, the Riesling grape is likely native to Germany. It originated in the Rhine River region, which runs throughout parts of Germany, France, Austria, and Switzerland. The first recorded mention of Riesling appeared in the 1435 sale of several Riesling vines to a German count. Green grapes in general, and Riesling in particular, grew steadily in popularity until 1787, when the Archbishop of Trier ordered that all bad vines be replaced with Riesling varietals. So by the 1850s, Riesling had become a fashionable and sought-after wine, commanding higher prices than actually Bordeaux and Champagne. It was through massive stockpiling that helped us discover that Riesling was unique amongst most white wines in that it benefits from aging. Unlike most whites, which are drunk when they're young, certain Rieslings can be enjoyed after decades, assuming, of course, if they're stored in the right conditions. Thanks to the high acidity level of the wine, it can be done. Today, it has emerged as one of the most collectible white wines amongst top connoisseurs around the world. So the best Riesling grapes are grown along the Mosel River in Germany on steep south-facing hills. In addition to Germany, it flourishes in one of my favorite locations, which actually is the Finger Lakes in upstate New York. I went there with my mom, sister-in-law, and her mom a few summers ago on a trip there, and it was the best experience. And I will tell you, it's truly where I learned to appreciate Riesling as much as I do now. And I learned so much about Riesling from that trip as well. In addition to those locations, you can also see Rieslings thriving in California, Washington State, as well as areas in Austria, and of course New Zealand as well. So when it comes to flavor profile, I found some great info with help from Wine Folly, which is like a wine Bible basically. So tasting Riesling starts with intense aromas that rise from the glass even when the wine is super cold. This aromatic wine offers primary fruit aromas of orchard fruit. So you've got nectarine, apricot, Honeycrisp apple, and of course pear. And besides fruit, you'll often smell things like honeycomb, jasmine, lime peel, along with a striking aroma that smells similar to petrol or petroleum wax, a natural compound called TDN. On the palate, Riesling has high acidity, kind of similar to the levels in lemonade. You'll also likely have additional flavors such as nectarine, maybe. You might get some pineapple, and you probably would get Meyer lemon as well. You'll probably smell things like that honeycomb, beeswax, ginger as well when you're drinking it. And it's likely, if it's an aged Riesling, you'll experience notes of diesel, petrol, and lanolin. I mentioned that Riesling sweetness to dryness is quite the spectrum earlier. So when it comes to German Riesling, Germans have done a fantastic job organizing a labeling system that will help you identify the styles that are available. All right, bear with me, I'm about to throw some German your way. So first there's LANDWEIN, which is Germany's simple table wine classification. Then there's the higher quality wines of Qualitätswein and Prädikatswein. Qualitätswein level wines commonly use terms on the label to indicate the wine's level of sweetness. So for example, if you see Trocken on the label, it's a dry Riesling from Germany. If you see the word Halbtrocken, it's half dry, so obviously sweeter than Trocken. On the other hand, Prädikatswein Riesling wines are traditionally sweet, and this quality level is commonly used in the Mosel region of Germany. Prädikatswein has an additional level of classification based on the ripeness of the grapes when they're harvested. So it starts with CABERNET, which is like the lightest one. Then you have Spätlese, which means late harvest, so it's sweeter. Then we have Auslese, which means select harvest and are even sweeter than Spätlese. Then we have Beerenauslese, which means berry select harvest. These are more rare. Then you have Trockenbeerenauslese, which means dry berry select harvest and are the most rare wine of the group, made from raisinated grapes that are dried out on the vine. And then you have Eiswein, when grapes freeze on the wine and are pressed when frozen, usually in the middle of the night, and are ridiculously sweet. So just checking in. Have I lost anyone yet? I'm done talking in German, so come on back in and join me here. And okay, so the last thing I'll mention about the sweetness of Riesling is this. The most expensive and complex wines made from Riesling are higher sugar dessert kind of wines. To craft these wines, the first technique is to concentrate the grapes through the evaporation of water caused by the fungus botrytis or noble rot. Riesling is incredibly susceptible to botrytis, and it's what makes some of them so sweet, so delicious, and so refreshing. I know the word fungus or whatever sounds gross or noble rot, but I promise it's fine. The second technique is to concentrate the grapes, allowing them to freeze, as in the case of Eiswein or Eiswein, which is what I mentioned earlier. So these concentrated wines have more sugar, in some extreme cases several hundred grams per liter, more acid to give balance to the sugar, more flavors, and more complexity. And I bring this up because while there are delicious dry Rieslings out there, truly the highest quality ones, in my opinion, are the sweeter ones. And I will tell you, you don't necessarily have to be a sweet tooth. I am certainly not a sweet tooth to love sweet Riesling, and here's why: the food pairing. So when you're thinking about what to eat with a Riesling, think about spice, because Riesling sweetness and acidity, it makes it the perfect accompaniment to spicy food. So strong Indian and Asian spices are a perfect match with Riesling. So honey, if you like curry, spicy food, and if you put sriracha and Tabasco sauce on everything just like this girl, you're likely gonna start loving Riesling, especially some of the sweeter ones, because it is a perfect wine pairing. I went from winking, now thumbs up. The sweetness brings down the heat instead of amplifying it like other wines might. And then of course, for my cheese lovers out there, when it comes to pairing it with cheese, I would try it with one of the less stinky ones and go more towards the direction of the delicately flavored soft cow's milk cheese. and of course dried fruit. All right, this has been a lot so far, and there's still so much more about Riesling that I haven't covered, but I'll wrap up this episode with talking about my favorite Riesling and what I would recommend, and that is Dr. Konstantin Frank from the Finger Lakes in New York. The reason I love Dr. Frank so much is because they really carry that full range of dry to sweet as pie Riesling. There's also a really great story behind the history of this vineyard. So, a European immigrant, Dr. Frank, and his family arrived in the US in 1951. After a brief stay in New York City, Dr. Frank, a professor of plant sciences who also held a PhD in viticulture, moved upstate to take a position at Cornell University's Geneva Experiment Station. Dr. Frank believed from his years in the Ukraine that the lack of proper rootstock, not the cold climate, was actually the reason for failure of European wines in the Finger Lakes region. So he continued to promote his beliefs and to seek a sympathetic ear, which he actually found in Charles Fournier, a French champagne maker and president of one of the nearby Gold Seal vineyards. Communicating in French, Dr. Frank revealed his research for growing the delicate European vinifera grape varieties in cold climates. For the first time, the northeastern United States could produce European varieties of those wines. In 1962, merely a decade after arriving in America, Dr. Frank founded his winery, which of course is still there today. I've been, it's wonderful. And it quickly earned a reputation for spectacular Rieslings, and its original planting of vines formed the backbone of New York's world-class wines. So I'd highly recommend it. You can find it at Total Wine, ABC, and most of your other favorite wine spots too. It's also incredibly affordable, y'all, and his styles range from like $10 for the least expensive bottle to around $40 max for some of the most expensive ones. So go ahead and try them all. Why not? It's not going to break the bank, and see what your palate enjoys the most. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe and share with your friends, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.